these are just some of the legal requirements, and this is just a step-by-step. A lot of people, when they think of hiring a worker, they think of this as the most difficult part, but pretty much this is a fill-in-the-blank thing, so I don't think it's too difficult. You just want to make sure and cover all the bases and make sure and do it correctly. I think the employee and employer relationships and management is much more difficult as far as that goes. So the legal requirements, everyone already probably has a EIN, employee identification number, but if you don't, that's an IRS number, taxpayer identification number, and it's Form SS-4. You're also required to keep complete wage records, and there's several sources you can find of different forms, and I've included some sources at the end of this presentation, so you can click on them and take a look. Workers' compensation insurance varies by state, but almost every state has workers' compensation insurance that protects workers and protects employers from worker injury. And if you don't have that and you're employing people that are not exempt from workers' compensation, you have liability issues, serious liability issues, so you want to make sure and complete that. It makes it a little difficult for hiring certain categories of part-time workers, but there are some exemptions also. Employment eligibility verification, Form I-9. This is Homeland Security form that certifies the person is employable, and that has to be filed on all new employees. Of course, a withholding allowance certificate, Form W-4. If you've ever worked for anybody, you've probably filled out that particular form or been presented with that form. Next slide, please, Colette. Thanks. As part of your payroll records, you'll need to keep a record of payroll taxes. These are usually quarterly payments based on the individual's payroll amount. You'll have to pay federal income. In the case of Idaho, state income at certain levels anyway, Social Security and Medicare. My son, who's turned 18 day before yesterday, was so excited when he got his W-2 this year, and he said, "Dad, look, I'm going to get back some money." And I can't remember how, several $100s. He was a lifeguard last summer, and he was pretty sad when I pointed out that was Social Security and Medicare, and you're not getting that back till you're 65 years old. Next is federal unemployment tax, and this is this employment tax only comes on fairly large employers. You have to reach a certain level of employee numbers or a certain level of payroll. But once you reach that, then you have to file this federal employment tax. There's legal requirements through federal law as far as a safe workplace, and you need to follow those requirements. They're way too much to get into in this realm, but it is important to kind of consider the relationship to your employee, and of course you want to value that employee as a person and keep that employee safe, and this goes for, of course, family and employees that we make, because farms are traditionally not, I mean, they're not, highly dangerous, but they are more dangerous than many workplaces. Probably the only more dangerous workplaces is mines, and logging is a fairly dangerous workplace. But farms can be made as safe as possible through diligence of the employer. Another thing to keep in mind is legal requirements for child labor, and we're just talking about labor of youth under age 18. It's pretty common that you hire kids for for haying or for hand harvesting. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was picking cherries in an orchard in Spokane Valley. So in Idaho, there's some requirements. Minimum age during school hours is 16. Outside of school hours, minimum age you can hire a kid at is 14, although with consent of the parent can be hired down to 12, age 12. In Washington, it's 18 years old during school hours, nobody under 18, and outside school hours, age 14 and 12, similar to Idaho. There's no certification requirement as far as certification other than they just state their age. And then hours per day or per week, there's no requirement or limits in Idaho, but in Washington there's several limits, 8 hours per day, 40 hours per week when there's no school, 10 hours, 50 hours per week in harvest, and then only 4 hours per day, 28 hours per week during school hours. That's only 16, 17-year-olds. So you have to pay attention to that and not be in violation of that when you're hiring youth to work. And youth get a great source of labor, can be really hardworking and really help a lot. Next, please, Colette. Okay, the search to find good employees. This can be a tough deal. You know, traditional way that's been done in agriculture is just word of mouth or maybe even the classifieds. I remember when 1980, I went down to the employment office because spring and wheat comes pretty late, and I got a couple-month job driving cat for a farmer on the other side of the prairie where it dries out quite a bit sooner by going down to the employment agency. So those traditional ways are certainly a way of finding employees, but there's also, you know, this is the modern day, and I'm sure Craigslist, although apparently you got to be careful who you ask out on your farm on Craigslist, but any employee you're going to have to screen properly. But Craigslist or online methods, another way of finding employees, and there's some good employees out there. It's just finding that right person that's going to fit what you need. We talked earlier about seasonal employees, and some of the options there are students, college students in particular. Their time off usually fits just the time that farmers need to have them available. Another good source of especially in rural communities, are teachers, because public school teachers are off during at least much of the summer, and many of them have quite a bit of experience working for farmers because that season matches up with their available time. Another area is employees from other industries whose off-season matches the times when you might need them, and these could be seasonal employers and employees in logging or other seasonal types of commerce. Another area that really strong employees would be these retiring baby boomers are coming out of the woodwork, all these retiring baby boomers. So retirees they bring a lifetime of experience. They have a good job, work ethic. They may not have, you know, quite the endurance of a young person or such, but they can sure fit into a lot of the jobs on the farm. When you're out there with a search for the right employee, really make sure that you've got that job description we discussed earlier in place. For one thing, the prospective employee can read that and think, do my skills really match what this person's looking for? And it gives you a chance to determine that with the prospective employee. With seasonal employees, retirees, things like this, it's going to require a lot from you, the manager, to be able to manage the flexibility required and the time management required, because they have such varying schedules that it sure can provide a right cost employee and the type of employee that might fit into your, particularly when you're just starting to hire an employee to fill some of the spots you need on your farm. A part-time seasonal employee might be just the right person. Even with a seasonal person, it's the right thing to ask for references. And if they've worked in agriculture before, they'll have some people that they can recommend for references. My wife likes to tell some stories about some of the hired men she grew up with, and one about her chasing her mother around the table, and I don't remember all the details, but apparently my father-in-law didn't check references on that particular fellow. But check the references, and if they're going to be involved in a particular task, when you're looking for the person, you can just devise some simple tasks, just a test that they could perform to make sure that they have the skills that they're representing themselves to have. Next slide, please, Colette. Okay, so now you've maybe found the person you want. The next thing is to get that person and hire them. There's some things to consider here. Compensation, the first thing we think of is how much are you going to pay me? And you need to know, prior to you get into this negotiation phase, or at least prior to you establishing what you'd like to compensate these people for, you need to find out what similar farms are being able to hire people for. I know that on the Week Prairie, where our farm's at, wages, I've always able to hire kids, high school kids, for considerably less than they work for over on the Camas Prairie. I'm not sure exactly why. I guess the Camas Prairie farmers have more money and able to pay better, but there's definitely a difference in compensation level, so you should be aware of that when you go to hire the individual you're considering. You should decide ahead of time how you will manage your payroll. Will you pay these individuals every day? Will you pay them weekly? Will you pay them usually bi-weekly or monthly? It minimizes the management of running the salary model through your business. Will you offer a salary? So it's just X dollars per day or per week or per month, or will you pay hourly? And if you're going to pay hourly, how are you going to manage that that tracking of hourly time? These are just some questions you need to think about. As far as fringe benefits, there's quite a few fringe benefits in agriculture. The more full-time the employees, the more fringe benefits that they have. Common fringe benefits include, of course, health and accident insurance, types of insurance that relate to health, but also housing, very common in agriculture. A lot of farms have extra housing, and so you're able to offer housing benefits. Gasoline, perhaps, or maybe even a vehicle for the employee to use. So quite a few benefits, direct access to produce, food, and quite a few fringe benefits available. So you need to identify what you're able to offer. And those benefits really, in particular if you're looking for a full-time employee, really do add to what you're able to offer, and the kind of person, the chance is much more likely that you're going to be able to recruit the kind of person you're after. You can't always get just the right person, so sometimes, and actually every employee you hire should have a training regimen or a training period, and that training, can be conducted by you, can be conducted by other employees, but it should be specific towards what's required of the job, especially around a farm. It should be specific for the safety needs of the person and to protect the safety of your family and other family employees who work with this person.